Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make fried chicken cutlets with a lemon garlic basil pasta, some Tomte cake, which is kind of like a gingerbread house decorating thing, but with a cake instead of like a cookie things. So we're going to use our little kind of cake molds. And the really fun thing about it is with the Tomte cake is in one of our cakes, we'll have a Tomte hidden, which is like in Sweden, they're like little people that live in your walls that take care of your house, make sure they turn off the lights and whatnot. And so one of these will be hiding in the gingerbread house, kind of that we're going to be decorating. And then they get to open up and eat it. And whoever gets it, like brings them extra luck for the year. They're also supposed to like bring the next Tomte cake to a party, kind of like a king cake where there's a baby, but a little bit different. Okay, let's start by making our cake so that those can get into the oven baking because those are going to need a good amount of time. We're going to start, since we are making 6 Tomte cake, we're going to add in 4 sticks of butter. So you need 2 cups. Again, I'm doubling up my recipes so that I can make enough for every kid to have a Tomte cake plus one more over on here. That way, because it's fun. We'll decorate them. And then we always do a little contest every year where we send out pictures to my family and they have to vote on who is the best cake with a blind testing. So nobody's allowed to know who made which one. And then we are going to add in 4 cups of dark brown sugar. You want the dark brown because it's going to give you a richer flavor to the cake. Going to give you more of that nice kind of like almost as if it has molasses in it. So we're going to scoop it up. I feel like I only really use dark brown sugar during the holidays. So 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, what's the overall flavor of the cake?
So it's like a spice cake. Kind of has some hints of like a gingerbread to it because we will be using like cinnamon and ginger and cloves and stuff in it. So it is kind of like a gingerbread cake in the sense. So like a very Christmas kind of flavored one. Okay. I'm pretty sure that was 4. Yes. Okay. Lost count. Very easy for me to lose count. Okay, so we've got our 4 cups of brown sugar in here. And we're going to cream these 2 together real quick until they're nice and mixed. And then we'll add in our eggs and our spices, and then we'll have milk and flour. But it's going to make several of these cakes. And the nice thing about it is they don't fall apart when you're decorating them. We always used to do just regular, gingerbread houses. And it was a frustration point because, little kids can never put a gingerbread house together because they just fall apart. They're very difficult. Even with copious amounts of frosting to try to hold it together, it just never works. So this is a nice thing because they don't have to really assemble anything, but they get to do all the decorating, which is really eating candy as their favorite part. And I've been, over the last month, I've been collecting red and green candy for decorating. So we have passed a couple Buc-ee's going to sports tournaments, and I have gotten lots of red and green candy from Buc-ee's to use to decorate these. Okay, we're adding in 4 eggs into our mixture. Put this over here since we're done. We'll give this a good whip. Oops. And this batter is going to be a slightly thicker batter because, again, it is a butter base. There we go. And give it a quick, speed it up a little bit since it's pretty thick. And we're going to make sure that egg gets mixed in there well. Okay. And you can see that brown sugar gives it a very rich color already. Okay, let's add in spices and our milk in just a second, but let me get all the spices. We need ginger, cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. And we're going to be using a lot of spices here. So we need a tablespoon of ginger. So I'm going to use up the rest of this and then get my next one. So this is where you're getting that gingerbread flavor in it. So a whole tablespoon. And this again is for 6 of these little mini cakes. Here we go. 1 second. I got to get a little thing to poke it. Sometimes our spices get pacted. There we go. Just needs a little love tap. Okay. So 1 tablespoon of ginger. And we're going to use a lot of cinnamon here. We're going to use 4 tablespoons of cinnamon. So you're going to get lots of cinnamon flavor in here, which means I'm going to use up the rest of this container. And then we're going to have some more cinnamon. Luckily, I always have lots of cinnamon on it. But I need to get another big one from Costco. So that's 2. Okay, let's shake off. So we've got 2 in here. And then let me grab my other one. I feel like I've done so much holiday baking that my cinnamon is down to the bare bones. 3 and 4. So 4 tablespoons of cinnamon. And that's going to also give it a really, really nice color. And then we're going to add in cloves and nutmeg. So we're going to add in 2 teaspoons of cloves. That's going to give you the Christmas flavor. 1, 2, and then 1 teaspoon of nutmeg. It smells so good. There we go. So we've got our spices in here. And then let's get our little puffing agent, our leavening agent in. We're going to use 4 teaspoons of baking soda. I know it seems a little bit crazy, but that's what's going to make this cake nice and light and fluffy. 2, 3, 4. And then 1 teaspoon of baking powder. There we go. And then we're going to use a teaspoon of salt. And we can mix all of these spices in with our milk in just a second and get everything mixed up well. And then we'll go in with our flour. So let's get these mixed in. And this is going to add so much flavor to our cake base. There we go. Okay. So I've got this part in. Perfect. Now we're going to add in our milk. We have 3 cups of whole milk. I'm going to add in half of it right now, because then we're going to add in some of our flour, and we kind of do a little so it's not all like a big puddle at one time. Just thin it out just a little bit. Here we go. And now we're going to add in half of our flour. We're going to add in 3 cups of flour. So 1, 2, and 3. And you're just going to use all-purpose flour. You don't need to use like a cake flour or whatnot. Don't use bread flour. That will weigh your cake down. So we're going to mix this in. And then we'll add in the rest of our milk and the rest of our flour. And this just because we're making it in such a big batch, it's a little bit easier to mix everything in when you do it this way versus trying to dump in all of the milk and all of the flour at one time. Okay. Got this just about mixed in, so now I'm going to add in my milk. So the remaining 1.5 cups. And again, this will make it nice and thin. And then we'll add in our remaining 3 cups of flour. There we go. I'm just going to get my spatula here and give it a good swoop around because it's a lot of batter. There we go. And this is one where you can kind of whip it because we have a lot of that baking agent that we're not going to make it too dense by kind of whipping it some. But I think for our remaining part, I'm going to do it just with my spatula on here. So let's get our last 3 cups in, and then we'll be ready to start baking this up. So I've got 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to slide this out of the way, and we'll mix this up until it's just perfectly incorporated. You can see again, it's just this really nice, rich cake that has just a lot of those great flavors from the cloves and the cinnamon, lots of cinnamon. Remember, 4 tablespoons of cinnamon here, a tablespoon of ginger, and a teaspoon of nutmeg. So again, just a lot of that great Christmas flavor. And then you have this really richness from the dark brown sugar. Here we go. Perfect. And this is a great way also because with, traditional gingerbread houses, nobody eats them after the fun. They're delicious, so you can definitely eat them up, serve them up after you've had your fun decorating them. Okay, looks like we've got this nice and mixed up. Let's get them in our little Tomte houses. My hands here. I've got a little bit of spray. You want to use some nonstick spray in them to help them come out. And then once we have them here, I've got a little bit of spray. You want to use some nonstick spray in them to help them come out. And then once we have them all bake up, and it's always fun because the kids all swear they have the Tomte in theirs. Okay, we're going to spray this down. I figured we're running low on our spray, so I might have to do the old-fashioned with some butter packets. There we go. Okay, we're going the old-fashioned way. I'm out of my bake spray. So in case you ever run out, because this is a modern world problem, but back how you used to do it is you just took butter and a paper towel. We'll start with one. You're going to take a kind of a pat of butter here on your paper towel, and you're just going to coat it all the way around on here so that it will come out when we bake. You can do it with shortening too. You can probably do it with olive oil. You just need to kind of coat everything up on here. That's what I remember doing as a little girl. You would save your little butter packets after you took them out, and they would, that's what you would use to kind of coat them up. Okay. So let's get this again, coat it all the way around on here. Make sure we get it nice here. I'm going to get in every little ridge because if you see, there's little details. So when you come out, they have these nice little ridges on it, which really makes it really lovely. Okay, let's get a little bit more butter. And then coat this guy up. Okay. And then we'll be ready to pop these in the oven. And then we can start working on our lunch while they're baking up. And we'll get our cookies made for tonight. We're going to make some Swedish pepparkakor, the dough, but the dough has to sit for a good hot minute. Okay. Now we've got them, my hands greased and them thoroughly greased up. So we're going to scoop this in and get ready to bake.
Oh, yeah, question. Where do you get those molds?
So I got these molds. There's a store that's called like the Tomte cake store, like online. I'm pretty sure, if you search it up, that's where you get it. They come with the molds, a little metal tomte, and then a book about the tomte cake, like about the tomte and the Swedish tomten. So I ordered mine a couple years ago from like that store. But I'm pretty sure Amazon might have them now. It's gotten a little bit more mainstream. It's funny. So we've been doing this for a couple years now, and my mom really liked them so much, so she got some for my siblings as well, because it's kind of a newer thing on there. And so it's pretty cool. I will say they're really awesome because they're so cute too. Especially like if you don't want to necessarily do the decorating on them, you can always just sprinkle them over with powdered sugar and they go into the lovely ridges, and then they just look really, really pretty. Okay, we're going to kind of fill each one of these up and then partially, and then we'll go back over and scoop in for each one after that. But I want to make sure I have them kind of all equally spaced out. And they're good, nice, like kind of a sturdy metal on them. And so they bake up really, really nicely in here. And they do come out. I've never had an issue with them sticking. So they've always kind of popped out well after they've baked. Okay. Let's get a little flour pocket there. So I want to mix that in.
And can you go over the cake batter?
So yes, so our cake batter, this is a double batch of it, but we used 4 sticks of butter, 3 cups of milk, 4 cups of dark brown sugar, 4 eggs, and then we used lots of spices. So a tablespoon of ginger, 4 tablespoons of cinnamon, 2 teaspoons of cloves, and a teaspoon of nutmeg, and then a teaspoon of salt. And then you do 4 teaspoons of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And I'm pretty sure I've got all of that listed. There we go. Yeah. And you just kind of mix that up. And 3 cups of milk, if I didn't mention that. Kind of cream it all together, add your flour in last, and then we'll let it settle. Once I've got them all filled out, we're going to drop our metal tomte in for the one. And again, my kids, when they're picking their gingerbread, they're like weighing them, which one weighs more, so certain that their gingerbread house is going to get it. But only one person gets it. And it's always fun on there when they do finally get a dig in and eat them. Okay. I think we've got these guys filled up. Let's see which one needs a little bit more. Maybe that one. Okay. I'm going to wash my hands. We'll clean off the tops, and then we are going to drop our tomte in. And the good thing is once you drop it in, you really can't tell which one it's in. So we won't, as adults, know either. Okay, let's get our little tomte here. He's very cute. He's just a little metal guy that you pop and eat the cake, and you're going to bake him up. He'll hide in there. So make sure when you stick it in there, he's right side up. Because one year I kind of put him in the wrong way, and then he was upside down when they, not that it makes a difference. But I'm going to put him in this one right here. And you're just going to kind of tuck him down and then bury him up, because you don't want anyone to see little feet or anything, so that they feel like they know exactly which one it is. Because you know how children, they're going to look, they're going to find every single way to try to figure out which one it is. Okay, let's go pop these in our oven. These are going to bake at 350 degrees for about 45 minutes. at this. And they're just so cute. And I will say, especially for little ones, they are much easier to decorate than an actual gingerbread house. Slide this here. Just when you put them in, don't put them this way because then they go in your racks. If you put them this way, then they'll stand on top of the little metal wires. And I'm going to set my timer for 45 minutes, and they should be ready.
Yeah, question. Can you explain what the Tomte cake are?
So the Tomte cake is, so in Sweden, you have little Tomte, or Tomten is for multiple, who live in the walls of your house. And they watch over you throughout the year, making sure, you know, you've turned off your lights. If you've left a door open, they close it for you. They're essentially like the Americanized version of like a gnome, but a gnome is bigger. So they're like little people, teeny type thing. And so they're kind of, let's see if I have, like these are little tomten. I have little decorations of tomten. Everyone calls them gnome, but they're the Swedish variations of it. The Santa Claus is modeled after Papa Tomten in Sweden. And, you know, so the Tomte cake is you have a little one that goes in there, and then you have these cute little cakes that you can decorate and then eat. And then whoever finds the Tomte in their cake has like good luck for the year. Yeah, even more good luck, because that's kind of what the Tomten do, is essentially give you good luck. Okay, let's get going on our lunch. I'm going to turn my water up so it can bring to a boil here, and we will start working on our dredging for our chicken. So we have 4 good kind of chicken breasts that we're going to fillet in half, and then we'll season up. But let me get my flour. So we're going to use about 2 cups of flour. And then we'll add in about a cup of panko breadcrumbs towards the end after we've done our first dredging. So there's 2. Now for our flavors that I'm going with today, we're going to use onion powder. So I'm going to put in about 1.5 tablespoons of onion powder and use up the rest of this guy. And add a little bit more. This is going to add a really nice savory flavor to our chicken cutlet. And then we're going to add in some paprika. This will add a nice kind of golden red color to it, which just gives it a nicer kind of look when you fry it up. Of course, these never want to open up for me. Let me grab a knife. I need this for my chicken. We're going to add in about, I want to say like 1/2 tablespoon of paprika. Very mild flavor to it, adds really great coloring to your fried chicken, gives it that nice kind of amber color to it. And then our spices, we're going to do some black pepper, about 1 teaspoon. And then before we add in our next spice, our water is boiling nicely, so let's pop in some pasta. And we're going to...
You have a question on the Tomte cake set. Where can you find that?
So I got them online, and it's like if you type in Tomte cake, like in a search engine, you should be able to find it up. I'm pretty sure that's the name of the website, is tomtecake.com. But you can also, I think, find it on Amazon. If I can find it on Amazon, I'll add it to my storefront when we're done with our stream, because they are really fun and cool, and just so cute. We're going to add in about 1/2 bag of pasta, since we're going to have kind of a smaller lunch here. Let me give it a good stir. We're going to let that boil up. Let's get back to seasoning up our things. So we've got our black pepper in here. And then we're going to add some herbes de Provence, which is kind of like a French seasoning. So think about how you have like an Italian seasoning. Herbes de Provence to me is like the French version of that. So it has a lot of great flavors, you know, thyme, savory, marjoram, parsley, a little bit of everything. Apparently today is the day I'm opening up all of my spices. It's because I run out of all my spices at around the same time. We're going to put in about 1.5 tablespoons, because I want lots of flavor on our chicken. And then we're going to add in about 1 tablespoon of garlic salt. Let me grab my fork. We're going to mix that up. And then we can beat up our eggs and get our chicken filleted and ready to kind of toss in here and do our dredging so we can start to fry that off, because once we get those in, the rest of lunch will come along fairly quickly.
Marianne sent you.
Well, thank you, Marianne. We appreciate that. Okay, make sure when you're mixing it up, especially if you're using a bowl versus, a square pan, but they like to kind of hide around your edges. And you want to make sure your spices get evenly mixed up there because you don't want bland chicken. I'm just going to slide this over here because we're going to be using our other cutting board and knife. My rule of thumb, I've got 4 chicken breasts here. We're going to use an egg per chicken breast. I will fillet my chicken breasts in half, so it will be like 8 pieces at the end. But my rule of thumb, again, is about a half a cup of flour and an egg per chicken breast. And you always want to err on the side of having a little more than necessary because you don't want to run out of dredging in the middle of the process, because it's a very messy process and then you have to stop, make more, and it's just going to add a lot more time. Okay, let me wash my hands real quick. Okay, we'll pop each yolk. And we're just going to whisk it up until the yolks are mixed well into the egg whites, so like a good scramble. You don't want to leave any long stringy egg whites in there because when you go to dredge, they'll pull them up and then you'll just have this soggy piece that fries up. Okay. That looks pretty good. Now, we can slide this up here. And we're going to get ready to fillet our chicken. Actually, don't need this anymore. Let's get our breadcrumbs ready to add in for the second round. Now, when you are working with your chicken here, try to keep one hand clean and one hand dirty for this process. So I'm going to have, this will be my clean hand that I'll use to kind of fillet my chicken. And then we'll use it to kind of coat everything up. So what we're going to do is we're going to fillet it down the middle, kind of go against the grain. It's okay if you have a really rough cut on it because that means your piece of chicken will be more tender. If you see on here like chunks of fat, cut them off because they will not cook up well. Always try to go against the grain when you're filleting because, again, that kind of cuts the little tendons and releases them so your chicken is more tender. And this allows you to you don't have to pound up your chicken, but you can keep it whole, but you filleted it, so you don't have to, it's not too thick. Because a thicker cut of chicken takes a lot longer to fry, and therefore you're more likely to burn your breading. There we go. And let's get this guy. So this one has a lot of fat on it, so we're just going to trim this up. I know sometimes you get them where they're nice and clean, and then sometimes you've got a lot of little things you need to take care of. Just get that little piece off. And again, just trim off the fat. It's only going to make your food chewy and not as delicious. Okay. So we've got our chicken here. And then when you're dredging, keep your clean hand away. Resist the urge to double hand and dredge because, trust me, you're going to want to have a clean hand to be able to manipulate things back and forth. So we've got this. We'll coat this up here. Okay. We're going to go through and we're going to do our first coating on it. And this is why I always season up my dredge the first time around so that it has lots of flavor in it. If you don't, then your chicken won't be as flavorful. This is the coat that's going to be stuck on your chicken forever. The second coating might fall off in little bits, but this is kind of a permanent on there. So making sure it's well seasoned is going to make sure your chicken has lots of flavor, because again, we're only seasoning up the breading, not the main chicken part. Okay, we're going to get this one coated up nice. And this first dredging essentially is going to bind with the egg and create like a natural glue that will hold the second coating on, so you have just a lovely crispy fried chicken. As you know, my son, I tell you, this is his favorite meal. He asks for like a fried chicken for him every single day. And I'm like, well, we can't have it every single day. But it is the holidays, so I am probably having it more than we normally do because he's home and he loves it. I'm going to get my oil starting to heat up over here. Again, this is why you leave one hand clean, because you can kind of work with it. You don't need a whole lot of oil, just enough to have your whole bottom of your chicken completely covered. Now, when we add in more, when we add in the chicken, it will raise the level up. Okay, now with my clean hand, we're going to add in our panko breadcrumbs. So we're going to add in about a cup or so. Use seasoned. I feel like the seasoned just has more of a flavor to it than plain. But if you don't have breadcrumbs around or panko breadcrumbs, you can use crushed up crackers, potato chips. You know, there's so many different things that you can, like, you know, I've heard of cereal and like crushed pretzels. Okay. Bruni, Loki. No barks. They're wanting to bark at everybody. Okay, let's go in and we're going to get our chicken dredged into our egg mixture here. And then we're going to coat it up just like this. And you're just going to kind of want to pat it on nice and firmly. It allows it to kind of stick on there. Here we go. And we're going to just go through, and by the time we have this kind of next coating on here, our chicken should be ready, our oil should be ready to drop them in, and our noodles should be just about ready to come out. That way we can start working on our sauce. And then while we work on our sauce, we can work on our pepparkakor, which is the Swedish word for like their gingerbread cookies, which are like a spice cookie, not an American gingerbread cookie. So growing up, we never decorated our gingerbread cookies because they were just these thin, crisp cookies, not like the traditional ones, the American ones that are much thicker, and you kind of do the little decorative frosting on them. Okay. And again, the reason, look how dirty one hand gets. And so if you just keep it with one hand, then when you go to wash your hands, you've got something to turn the water on and kind of just keep your whole area a little bit cleaner.
Can you go over what's in the dredge?
Yes. So our dredge, I started off with 2 cups of flour. Then we added in about a tablespoon and a half of onion powder, about a tablespoon of garlic salt, a tablespoon and a half of herbes de Provence, a half a tablespoon of paprika, and a teaspoon of black pepper. Mix those all up really well, did our first dredging on it, and then we added in about a cup more of seasoned panko breadcrumbs. And that will give you a nicer kind of little crunch on your breading. We'll coat this. I've got about 2 more after this. I've got my oil heating up. I heat my oil up over high, but when I drop my chicken in, I turn my temperature down to a medium because I want it to cook over a medium heat. But I want my oil to be hotter at first, because once we pop this chicken in, it's going to bring our oil temperature down. So I don't want it to be, if I have it at the perfect level, then it's going to drop too low and give you a soggy fried chicken instead of a crispy fried chicken.
And why do you prefer garlic salt over garlic powder?
So garlic salt, I feel like, has a better texture than garlic powder and salt mixed together. Garlic powder I find is kind of grainy, where garlic salt is kind of like garlic juice that has had salt mixed into it. So it gives you that great garlic flavor, but has a smoother texture to it. But you could always use kind of a mixture of, like, you know, half a tablespoon of garlic powder to half a tablespoon of salt. So garlic salt is also not as salty as regular salt. Okay, let's get your hands washed up and we can get ready for our noodles and our chicken to drop in. Okay, let's get a good scrub here. And not quite yet. I typically can feel the residual heat, but let me check my noodles while we're waiting. Now, these are kind of a thicker noodle, so they typically take a little bit longer to cook up, but I'm going to grab one and try it. Still needs about 2 more minutes. Okay. With our oil, we will know it's nice and hot when a small drop of water sizzles on it. So I still think it needs a little bit more, but I will check. Very small drop. So it didn't sizzle yet. So 30 seconds to a minute more. Once that drop pops in there, I'll know it's hot enough. Let's clean up this area just a smidge. And we'll be ready to drop our chicken in on here. And we'll let that start frying up. Our noodles, once we are done cooking it, I'm going to reserve a little bit of the starchy water for our pasta sauce. We are primarily going to have a creamy based sauce on there, but I like to use a little bit of the pasta sauce or water because it kind of really thickens it up without adding too much cream. So it gives you more bulk to your sauce without it being over like the top, you know what I mean, thick and creamy. Let's give this a good stir. Okay. Let's grab some tongs and we're going to drop our first set in. I'll drop them in and then I'm going to turn my temperature down. Now don't overcrowd your chicken when we put it in here because you don't want it to be too hot on there. So you'll pop it in and we'll turn it down. You don't want to crowd it because you don't want them touching each other or they won't get a nice crispy edge on them. I think we're going to do 3 at a time so that they have that space to kind of crisp up around them. And then I'm going to turn my temperature down to right around a 5. Okay, we're going to let that crisp and sizzle up here. And while we're waiting for that, let's see, our noodles should be just about ready. They were about a minute out. So let me get a little container to ladle off some of our starchy water here.
I got a question. Have the kids started their Christmas break yet?
They have. They actually started on Thursday last week. So they have been home now. What is today? What is Tuesday? Monday? Tuesday? What is it? Tuesday. I've already lost count of time because I'm not getting up on there. But so they've been home for a couple of days now. They've been kind of enjoying it. So my son's birthday was last week and he got a Switch 2 for his birthday and then some new games. So we've been actually having a lot of fun playing those games together. And that's kind of been taking up a lot of our time. Okay. I've got our starchy water here. When we reserve that for our pasta sauce, I'm going to get my strainer and then we will kind of get that strained and ready and we can start working on the base of our sauce. So let me give a good, there we go. And let me turn this off. I'm going to go grab a trivet so that I can rest this off to the side because I'm going to need that burner. I can rest this over here for right now until we're ready to use it. You do not need to coat your noodles in any butter or oil because when we make our sauce, it will have enough liquid that any noodles that are stuck together will come apart when it's time. Like they'll be coated in the sauce. Slide this guy up here. As we have these guys frying up nicely, I'm going to grab my other cutting board here. And we can get ready to prep our stuff for our sauce. So we're going to dice up an onion and start to saute it. And then we're going to mince up some garlic. I have some fresh basil and then green onions. And we're going to kind of just make this really nice, lovely sauce using cream, Parmesan cheese, the minced up herbs. So it'll be a very light and creaminess. But we're going to add a little bit of lemon zest to it and a spritz of lemon juice, which will add a really brightness to it, which will be really delicious. So let me get this nice and diced. I want them to be nice little pieces because I don't want the onion to be overpowering in here. So I'm going to kind of give it a nice mince up right after this as well, after we've got a small size on it. So that, you know, just like the garlic, you want these just little tender bits throughout, not too much of a bulk from it. There we go. And then I'm going to mince it. Up. So we have these nice kind of small little tender bits in there. And then for our sauce, we're going to start the onions off in some olive oil, but we will add a little bit of butter later to add a richness. But I like the caramelization that kind of happens with olive oil more so than butter. So we're going to turn our heat. I'm going to have it, since this is a metal pan, I'm going to have it around a 5 because I don't want it too high because it conducts its heat a little bit faster and a little bit hotter. So you're more likely to burn it versus if you are using a non-stick pan. Let's get our onions in here. And then we're going to give this a nice little coat up of, kind of toss them around and grab tongs. And just kind of mix them. Here we go. And then we're just going to let these saute for just a second here. Let me check on my chicken, see if it's ready to flip over. Oh, beautiful. So we'll get this one. This one, we're going to let it cook a little bit longer because I want it to be dark reddish, kind of that color like that. This one's still a little blonde. So I'm going to actually turn and I'm going to move this part of my pan up here. We're going to give these about 30 seconds to a minute more. That should give us a slightly darker color on it. I like a richer color on my chicken versus a super blonde color. And we're going to mince up our garlic. Garlic is going to be a key component in this sauce, so we want a good amount. So I'm going to do a good handful here, and we'll mince it up. I'm just going to add, and I will say, fresh garlic is going to be the winner in this dish over garlic. Now, you can definitely use garlic. It is going to be a bit more acidic and pungent in flavor, while this is going to be a bit more mellow. So we're going to mince it up nice and small, and then we'll let it toast up in there once our onions have gotten a good kind of brownish saute on them. Okay. Get this going here. And again, just keep it nice and small. You don't want super huge chunks because you will be eating this. And if you get a really big chunk, then you'll get a kind of like a stronger kick of garlic in it. So this will allow it to infuse out into our sauce a little bit more. Okay. That should be nice. Okay, let's flip these 2 pieces of chicken over. Much nicer. Beautiful. And we're going to allow them to kind of cook up nicely here. Let's toss this onions around a little bit first. Beautiful. You see we've got this nice little sizzle on there. I'm going to let them cook for a few more minutes before we add in the garlic. But while we're waiting on that, I'm going to turn this down a smidge to wash my hands. Let's start working on our pepparkakor dough in here. So I've got my Dutch oven, and we're going to add our butter in here to start to melt. So growing up, this was a recipe that my mom, we always had kind of cooking on the stove. You kind of cook the dough in the pot, which is, I know, a strange way to do a dough. But then it sat on the counter overnight, and you just needed to sit for a minimum of 8 hours or so before you started to roll it out. So we're going to add in our butter. And you're going to just melt your butter into this pot. And once it's melted, then you're kind of done with your heat. But you want the warmth of the pot because it kind of helps the sugar and everything combine together well. So we're going to use a whole cup of butter. And I'm going to put my back burner on just super low and let it kind of start to melt. And once we have that melted, then we're going to add in our sugars. So we'll have brown sugar, granulated sugar, and dark corn syrup. So that is kind of something that's unique about this recipe is the dark corn syrup. Let me grab a baking sheet here so that we can get ready to take our first batch of chicken out and get our next one in. I'm just going to rotate my pan, slide it right over here, see how it's cooking. Pretty good, just a little bit longer. We're going to put paper towels on our thing. So you don't have to use the paper towel method. I love the paper towel method because then I can use these paper towels to help clean up the excess oil at the end. But you want something to allow the chicken to cool and absorb fat. So the paper towels will absorb any of that fat that drips out, the oil, after you've taken it out, which allows it to stay nice and crispy. You could also put it on a cookie cooling rack to allow it to stay crispy with a tray underneath to catch any of the drippings. Just don't put it on a flat surface. Otherwise, where it touches on that flat surface is going to make it soggy. Now, paper towels will absorb it so it doesn't get soggy, it gets nice and crispy, just like with bacon. Okay, our onions are getting this nice, lovely saute on here. So I think we're ready to throw our garlic in. Looking gorgeous. And we're going to put in all, this is about 1.5 tablespoons of freshly minced garlic. And let me get a little bit of butter here. Let's grab a new stick. Because we're going to use this for our base, but I like to cook the garlic to infuse into the butter. Make sure your pan temperature is not too high because, again, you don't want to burn your garlic. You want it more to infuse into this butter. And it smells wonderful. Okay, while that's melting, I think we might be ready to take our first round of chicken off. So let me slide this over here, get my little lid out of the way. Beautiful. Now, you see a nice golden thing? You want to put it oil side down on your paper towel. This is going to allow it to soak up that extra grease on it and make it more crispy. There we go. This guy would. There we go. He's, again, beautiful golden brown. You get this nice amber color from the paprika in the mix here, which just adds, again, a great savory flavor, makes it so delicious. Let's get our next round of chicken in here to kind of crisp up. And coating there. Again, I am cooking this on about a 4. So it is a medium low, but the oil is nice and hot, and that allows it to cook evenly through. So it cooks all the way through that chicken while preventing you from burning that crust, which is really, really important because you don't want to burn your outside and have raw in the middle. So whenever you're frying something, go low and slow. Here is our garlic and our onions. You can see they're starting to infuse up. We have this nice kind of golden caramelization on it, looking gorgeous here. I'm going to give my back burner a little bit more love and heat. We're almost there with that. I don't want to boil my butter, but I want it to simply melt. Once it's melted, then we will add in our sugars and stuff like that. But while we're waiting, we can chop up our fresh basil here that we're going to add into our pasta sauce on there.
Yeah, what cooking oil do you use?
So I use olive oil, but on my pan, that's a mixture of olive oil and butter for that because I like the butter flavor in the sauce, but I like how olive oil cooks onions a little bit nicer. You can kind of saute them at a slightly higher heat where butter has the milk solids, which will burn if you go too high with it. And then for frying my chicken, I also fry it in olive oil, but I make sure I fry I typically like to keep my oil right around 350 degrees. That gives you a perfect golden fry, so the oil's not too hot. And again, just makes it, I think, just like a perfect kind of cooking blend for it. And I like the flavor on it. Okay, we've got some fresh basil here. So we're going to mince up our fresh basil that we're going to add in and let it saute. I'm going to use some of it in now as to season up our thing, and then some of it will go as kind of a garnish later. But we want it all chopped up both ways. There we go. So get this nice and minced. Beautiful. And the reason, again, you don't want to just throw it all in now is basil is one of those delicious herbs that while cooked, it lets out flavor, but it's also wonderful added as a garnish because it's not super potent. So we're going to put about half of it in now and let it saute to get more of that rich flavor out. And then we'll add in some more in a little bit too. But looking good. So that little stir, we're going to let it kind of infuse out those flavors, give it a little bit more richness.
Have you ever thought about being a professional chef?
You know, I've always thought about it, but my thought is I really love cooking and I have a lot of passion for it, but I don't think I would enjoy it if it was like in the restaurant world where you have like the pressure of getting food out and, you know, all the critics and stuff like that. So I enjoy it for doing it now, but I don't know if I would enjoy it if it was my job. Plus, you know, I already have to deal with my critics right now, which are my kids, especially Evie. She's a tough critic. I'm gonna put that right here. Okay, my butter right here for our cookies is all melted. So I've got it. I'm removing it from the heat because I don't want it to continue to cook. We'll slide that over there. And let me clear up just a little bit of this room. We can mix in our sugars for this on here. So let me grab my brown sugar and my granulated sugar. We're going to start with 1 cup of sugar of our granulated. We're going to mix this into our melted butter. There we go. And then we're going to do our brown sugar, and we're going to use a 1/2 cup of brown sugar. We're going to use just regular good old, it doesn't need to be dark brown sugar because we are going to be adding dark corn syrup to this. So we need a whole 1/2 cup. Make sure it's firmly packed. Packed it too firmly. There we go. And essentially the heat from this butter and the residual heat from this pan is going to help this sugar kind of dissolve and just come a little bit nicer together here. And then we're going to add in 3 tablespoons of dark brown sugar and our spices. And those spices will really come out with this heat as well. Let's get this going here. Let's give this, I'm going to turn this down nice and low. And then let me see if our chicken needs to flip here. Let me grab another tongs and a spatula because I find sometimes it's just easier to flip with a spatula. Beautiful. Perfect. And then I always like to, because I have found that my pan always cooks a little bit hotter up here, I just rotate it a little bit and we'll let those kind of crisp up. Kind of perfect timing on everything here. Okay, we're going to let that sizzle, let those flavors come out for a little bit. Let's get our spices in here. So we're going to be using cinnamon, cardamom, ginger, and oh, that one's empty. Nutmeg, no nutmeg, I believe. Let's see. And cloves. Where are you? Right here.
Yeah, question. Do you memorize all the recipes?
For the most part, I have them completely memorized in there. I do have to review them every so often. This is a recipe I make once a year, so I went through and I reviewed it because the original recipe is in Swedish, which I know very few words in Swedish that I've learned there. So I kind of have to go through and get the translation, and there's kind of, we've tweaked it over the years to make it like American customary measurements versus like the metrics ones because they use like deciliters and everything. So it is something that we definitely like, I go review over. But if it's something like my chicken or chocolate chip cookies, some of those things, those I have memorized off the back of my head because I have made them so many times. Like my homemade pretzels, there's some that I have just completely memorized, or the base of a recipe memorized. Okay, let's add in 3 tablespoons of dark corn syrup. This is the only time of year I use dark corn syrup, is for these cookies. And I always like to do a little bit over because it doesn't all come out when you kind of shake it here. And then we're going to mix our dark corn syrup in, which will give it a nice kind of rich color to it, which just makes it absolutely lovely. And then we're going to add in our spices. We have cardamom, cinnamon, cloves, ginger. The nice thing about this one is it's like a teaspoon of every single one. So I'm just making sure I've got this all incorporated first. And then let me check my chicken here, but let's get our spices in. So, and this is the one where I'm going to tell you your spices need to be fresh, because if they're not, you're going to need to use more of them. And it might be spices like cloves. You typically only use once a year. So just make sure they've got a good potency, otherwise add a little bit more. So a teaspoon.
And what kind of cookies are you making?
These are Pepparkakor, which are Swedish spice cookies or Swedish gingerbread cookies, although they're more like a spice cookies. So a teaspoon of cloves, a teaspoon, and I like to do a heaping teaspoon of cinnamon because I feel like cinnamon is one of those spices that you can go more on, and it adds a little bit of more punch, but not a lot. A teaspoon of cardamom. And then a teaspoon of ginger. And the thing with that works so well with this is this butter and sugar is nice and hot now, which means that these spices are going to infuse a little bit better into the cookie over just the quick bake, because these cookies bake up in like 5 minutes. They don't take very long. You roll them out really thin, and so they bake really fast. But allowing the spices to really sink in, especially with this little heat here, infuses their flavor a bit more. Okay, let's get this mixed around. Let that sit here for just a second while we work on our chicken and our sauce.
You have a couple questions about cardamom. What does it taste like?
It is a very unique flavor. And I'm trying to say, I don't know if I can tell you if there is a spice that is similar. Even my husband is like, there's no spice similar to it. It is, you'll find it in a lot of European like cooking and cookies and desserts. There's cardamom cake and lots of things, but it is, again, it's a very unique flavor. It plays really well with, I feel like, the Christmas spices in there, but I don't know if I could explain it to you. It is difficult because it is so unique on its own. I absolutely love it. My husband is not a huge fan of it, although he doesn't mind it in the Pepparkakor because it's masked by some of the other flavors, but I think it's just so delicious. But there's like, you can make little butter cookies, like cardamom cookies that have it in it, and it's so lovely.
Is it sweet?
It plays well with the sweet, but it's not like sweet like cloves or cinnamon, but it plays well in sweet things. My husband just disagrees because he does not like it at all. I mean, sometimes I add cardamom to shortbread, things, or like a butter cookie on there. I mean, let me see. I'm going to smell it and see if I can get even more. I don't know. It's cardamom. Like, I can pick it out and everything, but it's similar. I would say there's like a little bit of similarness to nutmeg, but I'm not sure. Not too much though.
And where can I find your recipes? And are you cooking Christmas dinner live?
We will definitely be cooking our Christmas dinner and our Christmas Eve dinner because we do 2 special dinners live. They might be in parts because our Christmas dinner is a crazy feast that has, I'm cooking duck, ham, Swedish meatballs, Johnson's potatoes, salmon. It's a feast. It's a multi-course feast. So that one we'll do throughout the days. And then tomorrow we do a rib roast with a bunch of little things. So we will definitely be kind of cooking parts of it or showing it and streaming it as we go. For our recipes, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so you can always recreate these recipes by watching them. I do send out recipe cards for our members a few times a month for them, using some of the recipes that we've made on there. But for everyone else, you can find them from our link. We're going to add in some of our starchy water here to kind of mix it up. I do little by little, because we're going to add in some cream as well, but I like to kind of deglaze with the starchy water. Here we go. And give it a nice little thing. Let me see, check. I must have bonked my thing over here when I walked by, so it got a little bit higher. So let's see if they need flipping. I had it on a 6 instead of a 4. Good thing we checked it, because they're ready to go now. That's the one thing with knobs. Sometimes I'll swing by them. Okay, let's sit in here. I'm going to add again a little bit more of our starchy water. We'll let it simmer and cook up. Don't want to just flood it, just add it in things, let it simmer, kind of infuse out those flavors for it. While we're doing that, let's get our next kind of part of our cookies in here. Now we're going to need to add in our egg and our baking soda. But again, just look how beautiful this is. It's giving you that nice, rich kind of color to it. So we're going to add in 2 teaspoons of baking soda, and then we'll add in about a half a teaspoon of salt. So let's get those. We're going to mix it in, and then we got to mix in, and we got to beat up an egg and then mix it in. So half a teaspoon of salt, and then 2 teaspoons of baking soda. One, 2. Mix that into here. There we go. Okay. Let's get our splash of cream in here with our starchy water. Kind of thicken it up. Let's give it a good swirl here. And then, since we're going to need to add a little bit of garlic salt in here, because we didn't add any salt to our pasta water, but we want to add a little bit in here. So about a teaspoon or so, good shake over. And let me get my zest for our pasta. So we're going to add in some lemon zest. This is going to give it a nice kind of tangy lemon flavor, which is going to work really well with the garlic and the onions and the basil. You don't need a whole lemon, like half of a lemon, because lemon zest has a lot of flavor, especially when you heat it up. So don't go too overpowering on it. Let me give that a little stir. Perfect. We're going to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese in there to start melting up, and then we'll pop in our pasta, because we're almost ready. Our cake is going to be ready here in just a second, and there we go. So I've got some shaved Parmesan here. I'm going to just sprinkle it out in kind of sheets so it kind of melts up nicely. And again, we have our heat on low, so we'll do it. Let's see what our chicken looks like here. Good. I think we're nice and done with this. We're going to add that over here. And we'll give it a good little shake. And we're going to add it into our pan. Got to rearrange these because we're running out of room. I'm going to turn off this. Perfect. Okay. As that's simmering, we're going to finish up our thing over here. So let me grab a small bowl, because we're almost done with our dough. And then you just let it sit. And then our cake has about 1 minute left on it, so we'll take that out here. So kind of perfect timing. So you want to make sure your egg is well beaten before you mix it in here, because Once it kind of hits that, it is warmer in there, so we'll kind of cook it a little bit. So we've got 1 egg, well mixed. We're going to pour it into our mixture.
You have a question. What's the best way to get rid of the leftover oil?
So I use the paper towels that my chicken are sitting on to soak up that oil. And then that kind of best way to use it. And then I throw it away because you never, ever want to pour oil down the sink. Ever want to pour oil down the sink. Not that I have ever done that, ever. Hot water does nothing. It coats your pipes. So don't do it. Trust me, guys. I know, you know, some crazy people out there. Okay, we've got our egg mixed in here. Beautiful. And then we are going to add in our flour. But our cake is our cake is kind of sounding at us. So I'm going to turn this down real low so that it can simmer. And we'll get our cake. We'll make sure it's nice and let me grab a little stick. You don't need a toothpick. You need a skewer. They work the best. I think they're done though. I don't even know if I need to do a skewer because they are popped up. Let's see. Yeah, actually a few more minutes, but almost. Let me do the back ones. They're not the easiest to manipulate here. Okay, back ones are pretty much done. So let's rotate. And see, when you get them for the kids, you're going to cut the tops off so that they lie flat on the ground. And what I do is I get actually a little piece of cardboard. Let's do 2. I need 2 mittens for this, but at least a little piece of cardboard that I cover with aluminum foil. And then you put a little pat of frosting down and it holds your cake on it. But that way they have this nice kind of base for it. Here we go. I will say these need like a few more minutes. So by the time we plate up, they'll be able to come out. But that's why you always check. So I'm going to put 5 minutes because I think that's all they need because those back ones are almost there. So about perfect. Okay. We're letting our cheese melt and simmer. We've got this mixed in. So let's slide this guy over here. And now is the fun part where we mix in our flour for this. So you're going to use all-purpose flour. You don't need a cake flour or anything like that. I've got it over here. 3.5 cups, but don't all add them in at one time. Start with 3, and then that last one, you're just going to add it until it holds it. I feel like these cookies, because they're kind of a translation from a grams over to the U.S. customary, if you've overfilled your cups or whatnot, they can make them too dry because it's a fairly sensitive. So start with 3 cups. And then your last half a cup, you're going to mix if you need it. Because again, you don't want a super dry dough. And you can add up to a tablespoon of water if you need to add it to kind of help, but it should be fairly good. And it's going to cream together and it's going to come together just like a regular cookie dough. So you want it to be kind of a nice thick dough, and then it actually will get even thicker as it cools. And mixing it. You see how it's coming together, and it's just absolutely wonderful. Here we go. And what I like to do before I go and try to do it, I grab it and I feel kind of like this. So I feel like I need a little bit more in there, but not much. Like 1/4 a cup more. Because again, when it cools, it's going to go together a little bit, but you want it to kind of mix together very nicely here. But you don't want it to be with too little, or it's going to give you a runny, really crispy cookie. Here we go. And remember, as it sits, this dough is going to hydrate more. Beautiful. So this is right about where we want it. Okay, make sure I mix it here. Now, what I always say with your hands, you go in with your hands, you're going to form this all into one big ball. Squeeze it together right here because you want to make sure everything from top and bottom gets mixed. And then you can see we just have this wonderful dough. And then what you're going to do is press it firmly down, and then you cover it with plastic wrap and then the lid, and it sits on your counter for about 8 hours or overnight. So growing up, we always had it sitting overnight, and then we would always come in and lift up the lid, steal a little bit of the dough, and put it there. It needs to sit because those spices infuse. You also want the dough to come to room temperature kind of thing so that it's easier to roll out. So we've got our dough there. And see, the nice thing is I got my little Christmas pot. So you've got this cute little Christmas pot that goes there. Okay, let's get this show on the road. Let's add, I got our cheeses melting here, so it's nice and low. We're gonna add in our noodles. So don't worry if they're stuck together. Well, as soon as you touch them with this sauce, they will fall completely apart as they get coated up. You can see that Parmesan cheese in there, just coating it up lovely. Beautiful. And then we're gonna add in a little bit more Parmesan and our fresh basil on top, and our pasta will be ready. And then we're gonna be ready to serve up because our cake should be done with this. Okay, let's grab our fresh basil. We'll sprinkle our fresh basil in. Remember, we added half of it in there when we did our first time, and then we have our second half now to give some more fresh. We're gonna add a little bit more Parmesan cheese. We'll mix that in with our tongs. Let me wash my hands up. And look, perfect, because we have about 30 seconds left on our oven, and we'll get ready to transfer those over here. So kind of coat it up, but you see just how wonderful and delicious this is going to be. Okay, let's clear this off because we're going to be ready to bring our Tomte cake over here, and I want a nice spot to put it because it's going to be nice and hot. And then I'm going to actually grab this to transfer it on. It will be a little bit easier, but let's go grab them. That way I can carry this instead of 3 Tomte cake. 6, yes. 3 molds, 6 cakes. Much better. Okay. Nice kind of firm tops. I'll slide these out. Now you do need to let them cool down before you flip them out. If you flip them out now, while they're still hot, they haven't loosened up, they can kind of tear a little bit. So just let them sit there and come cool down. Also, it's very, very hot, so they'll be difficult to handle if you do it that way as well. But you can see how the cake kind of pumps up over the top, and then you just kind of cut those tops off. And if you're really crafty, you can use the tops to make kind of like a gingerbread cake pop. Use that dough in there. But we have our cute little Tomte cakes. They're upside down now, but then they'll be ready to decorate later. Okay, let's get ready to serve up our lunch here. So let me grab a little cutting board out, and then we're gonna serve up nicely. Okay, and a plate. And I've got my little shovel here. Okay, guys, for lunch today, we have our lemon, garlic, and basil pasta. It's in a nice creamy sauce that has sauteed onions, fresh garlic. Look at that wonderful cheesy Parmesan cheese. And we are going to serve that with our crispy fried chicken that we season with herbs de Provence, garlic, salt, onion powder, and black pepper and panko breadcrumbs. And then, of course, we'll add a couple shreds of our Parmesan cheese to the top. We made our cookie dough, our Swedish pepparkakor dough, which we're going to leave in our pan to sit for at least 8 hours or overnight. And then we'll roll them out. And then, of course, we made our Tomte cake that are cooling here, which we'll be able to decorate instead of a gingerbread cake or a gingerbread house. We have Tomte cake that decorate. And one of these has the little Tomten hiding in it. And whoever gets that gets extra luck for the year. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. Our tomte cake, our pepparkakor, or our pasta and chicken, and you can watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. So you can always go there and search for, our pans, our knives, our cutting boards, all the different things that we have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here.